Wow. The first guy presenting after lunch, this is going to be interesting. I myself, as a Finnish person, I did not actually go to the army, so I feel really, really bad about that amongst my Finnish relatives. That's kind of a, bummer. Our next speaker is Anders Brännström. He's the former chief of the Swedish Army, has an extensive background from the military and the Swedish Army, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Anders, but you're not afraid to speak your mind. Let's see. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Looking at the world we are living in, from a security perspective, I think you all agree with me that we are looking at something that is uncertain, tense, and potentially very dangerous. And when you find yourself in a situation like this, sometimes it's a good educational method to go some decades back in time when you knew where you were, and then you start working yourself ahead again. So let's go back to 1990. Then Germany was united again, as we know. A year after that, the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact were dissolved in 1991. And some Swedish politicians, they made the same mistakes as 1919. The politicians started coming to a conclusion that there will never be any war anymore. No? You remember them, no? I'm not unpolite enough to mention names here, but we know who they were, no? And in parallel with these events, there were also things happening in the area of trade and industry that are significant for this situation that we are in now. There were a privatization, outsourcing, just-in-time philosophy were really there to stay. It was a digitalization and internationalization also. And that was, of course, basically very positive. It was positive for the economy. It was positive for the prosperity of us as citizens, our country, and this part of the world. But risks were taken. Risks were taken during these 34 years from 1990, from national defense, definitely. Information technology, definitely. Integration with the people that come from other parts of the world, definitely. Energy, and I could keep on. So now, 34 years later, the world we are living in and looking at, it's not like we wanted it to be. Let's agree on that one. There's a war going on in Europe. There's a war going on in the Middle East. There are conflicts all over the world. And let me just mention some words to underline what we all know, what I started, that we are living in a very potentially very dangerous world. Russia, China, USA, economy, energy, climate, pandemics, terrorism, and organized crime. And all of these things, that comes in an unsorted way at the same time. It's not like in a laboratory or a classroom you could divide it, and first we take terrorism, and then we take organized crime, and then we take care of the wars. We have to take care of everything at the same time. And that's why I can argue, as the headline for this little speech, was we have a security debt. A security debt that we have to take care of in our society. I mean that we have taken money during this journey that we should have put in security, but we have done many other good things with them. And that's in itself is positive, but it's very dangerous, and I think it's payback time. Then we have to ask ourselves why and how did we end up in this situation? If we want to learn from history and not do the same wrongs all the time, we have to look at what's wrong, what could we change. And firstly, of course, I admit there are some really bad actors out there in the world. There are the terrorist leaders, there are Mr. Putin, Xi Jinping, and so on. You can discuss whether he is positive or negative, so to say. But that's a fact. No? But also, I mean, and I argue that there are things in our minds, our mindset. We have psychological weaknesses that is part of this problem, as individuals and as a collective, as Swedes and whatever. First of all, we tend to plan for what we hope will happen instead of what can happen. Look about national defense. We were hoping so very much that Putin and the Russians wouldn't use all the money that they are now using for our own. If you look at it as from our own egoistic view, they didn't come for us. It was Ukraine this time. But still, it was very bad that we were hoping and we were talking about possibilities and so on, when there was fact that there were things in our close neighborhood that could have been used against us. The second fact, that is the thesis of gradual adaptation. You know, the shootings and the explosions out in the suburbs in the big cities 10 years ago or 5 years ago, it was big news. Now it's part of the normal situation. Ask me, I'm living in Uppsala. The third fact I would say, that is, there was a American general that you maybe have heard of Douglas MacArthur. He said that the history of mistakes in warfare could be summarized in 2 words: too late. And I think you could transform that also to the civilian world. Too late. Too late to understand that there's a threat coming. Too late to pay what has to be paid and make the decision that you could meet the threat. Too late to make alliances with your friends and gather your friends. We're talking about things. We are writing PowerPoint slides and so on, but we are not making the right decisions in the right time. The fourth phenomena that I want to mention, that is mirror imaging. We tend to think that Putin and Xi Jinping and the Iranian leaders think and look upon the world with the same eyes as we do. I can tell you that's a big danger and a big mistake to think. They have their own agenda, and we could never think that they are what is logic and what is probable and so on. That is a dangerous way of handling it. And the fifth and last thing is that I think that we have a groupthink and silence culture in too many places in the Swedish society. I know it very well from the armed forces, but I know that there are also in other parts of the society where the truth and the real unpleasant truth never comes up to the surface and for the decision makers to look upon. That is dangerous, and I think those things that I mentioned here is part of the road that took us to the situation now that is not too good. And it's very dangerous for people like you who are dealing with research and development and should look upon these new ideas for mankind and for your companies and for our country if you have this problem. I'm not blaming you. I blame the collective, all of us, and try to find openings for the future. The future then. Some people say that you shouldn't talk too much about the future. You shouldn't speculate. They use the word speculate, and when they want to say looking into the future is a bad thing. I would say as professionals, every one of us must try to make assessments of what will happen in the future and come to conclusions and then build on this one. Otherwise, you will always be too late with the decisions. And first of all, Russia will be a problem for many, many years to come. An aggressive neighbor with a high potential of violence and power to get what they want. It's not only about Vladimir Putin, let's be honest with that. If he died during my speech here, someone else would replace him. And it's the system of a country that is very close to us. And I think the guys in my age will probably not experience any other Russia. The youngest here, and look, I hope for you that you will see something else. But we have to be serious. We have to realize that it's a bad situation. It's dangerous. China, I think, is the big long-term threat. If you talk about the Americans, they say, okay, Russia, that's a problem now. But the real thing, that is China. They have ambitions, as we all know. Economy, raw materials, and influence both economically and politically. That is part of the future that we have to take care of course. USA, it's no law, the human law that US should put higher priority on the Atlantic Ocean than the Pacific. It's no law that the Americans should be so internationally interested as they have been, so to say. So let's see what happens to the politics in US. I come back to it in some minutes. So, terrorism, that's a part of the future for us. A long time, many years, we could be the small country up high in the north that have their neutrality policy and no one would anything to harm us. That's not the way it is anymore. We are part of the international society. We are the part of the enemy for the terrorists, and definitely that's just a matter of time and place where they should hit us the next time, I would say. The cyber threat. I won't say anything more than I realize that this is a threat because we have a very competent person that we talk to afterwards about that. So, but I want to the diary that I mentioned it as a serious thing, but I was not competent enough to dig in that hole, so to say. And we have influence operations. We have people all the time, from we wake up in the morning until we go to bed in the evening, that try to influence us, to say that we should decide something that we really shouldn't, and that we should think something bad about things that really is good. That is part of the future, definitely. So there are many challenges to handle here. And now I got the feeling that you think I'm a negative person. That, okay, so having said a positive words during his 15 minutes of speech here, so to say. But I can tell you that Peter Burman here, who was a conscript when I was a platoon commander in Infantry 19 here, he knew that I could be harsh sometimes. But mainly, I try to be a positive person. That is what we are all paid for. Even in harsh circumstances like this one, we have to find the openings for ourselves and our commanders, our bosses, and the companies or the parts of the state that we are serving, so to say. So with this positive attitude, I can say, first of all, we can influence the situation. If we want and if we are willing to pay. Sometimes we find ourselves in a situation that we definitely can't influence. That's very negative. No? But this situation that I'm talking about, part of it, we can influence if we do the right thing and if we dare come to the right conclusion and decisions. Secondly, we have resources. We don't have all the resources in the world, but we have some resources very, very much than many parts of the world that I was visiting during my time in the armed forces. Darfur, Afghanistan, Liberia. They could complain that they don't have resources to fix this with security, but we can't do it. And thirdly, we have a leadership. We have leaders. Okay, there are some bad leaders in Sweden, we all know that, but the core of it, they are good leaders. We have good leaders that can make decisions. They could fulfill the decisions, and they realize that nothing is for free. Okay, what shall we do then? We have talked a little about the situation. We have talked a little about a theory about how we came there. And we have talked about that we have possibilities to do things as a nation and as companies and as individuals. So I will say something about what I think that we should do as a country and internationally, and something that I think that people who are serving in companies like most of you should try to do. And then I try to conclude, and then I hopefully have some minutes for questions. So what shall the countries do? What shall the international society do? First of all, we have to see that Russia don't win the war in Ukraine. I can see very clear parallels with what happened in the 30s with Germany and Hitler. The world could have stopped him when he went into the Rhinelands in 1936, but they waited 9 years, and huge mankind suffering and the end of the Second World War in 1945. So we have to stop him now. That is definitely very clear. Secondly, we are now members in NATO, and we are building the total defense. And I think that is very clear that we have to be full members we are full members, so to say, in the writings, but we have to work together. We have to send people to the NATO staff. We have to do exercises and training, and our politicians have to work also. And building the total defense, I think many of you and your companies will have to work in that area. The total defense is not only the armed forces and the official authorities, that is the companies. That is the big difference between the old total defense during the Cold War and now, that is that now all the things that really counts, it's with the companies and not with the states. Thirdly, I think that we have to handle a US that is not so extremely focused on Europe and the Atlantic Ocean. We have to realize that in their picture there is a lot of challenges in the Pacific with China and everything, and we have to do things more by ourselves and with our own resources, and not all the time trust US to come and fix things for us. We have to handle terrorism. As I said earlier, it's a threat, definitely. And we have to see too that we put all these cameras and whatever they have in UK, and people say that's so horrible. But we have to realize, I don't want my children to be killed by a terrorist, and you neither. But then you have to pay the price. You have to do things to meet the threat, and not just hope that they will go to Norway or Ireland or whatever. No? And then we have to take care of everything else. Crime, economy, climate, and everything. And what should the companies do then? I think that start paying back on the security debt. That is number one. And if you have started, pay a little bit more. I mean, collectively, we are in a bad situation. We have been doing things the last 30. We have taken the freedom of doing things during the last 30 years. That we have things that comes. It's the municipality of Kalix one day. It's the Church of Sweden the next day, and there are other organizations one after one. They fall because they haven't paid enough on the security debt. And it's about increasing resilience. I mean, the operation must be ongoing, also the bad days, not only when the sun is shining and so on, and those things that we have been outsourcing, everything that has to do with security and guarding and everything. We maybe have to start thinking another way. Maybe not totally, but partly anyhow. Civil defense or total defense, that is the direction that is pointed out by our politicians. And we have to start building it. And I would say that, as I said on the lunch with some of them, if you prepare for the worst, if you prepare for war, then you can also have resources for handling a flooding or a storm or whatever. No? But it doesn't work the other way. No? So the message is we have to build a total defense. You have to build that, the civilian part of that one, the civil defense, and that is very important. If I quote Minister Carl-Oskar Brolin there in his famous words that he said, that's like, get started, sätt igång. And then you say, oh, okay, then people, some of us, I don't know, maybe you don't, but many people that they start then arguing and think the Swedish way, but it's so, how should we do it? Then we should remember Bishop Desmond Tutu and his theory about how to eat an elephant. And the trick is you have to take it bit by bit. If you try to swallow it directly and fulfill all the objectives directly, you will not succeed. You will have to take the most important thing to do to create a civil defense, and you do that first. And then you take the second important, and then the third, and then when you have been working on, you have, so to say, transferred yourself for a very low level to a much higher one, and the highest level we will probably never reach. And maybe the most important, we have to build trust, resilience, and will to defend among the people that we are working together with. Because we all know that the most important building block is, I dare to say that with technicians like this, it's the human being, it's the persons, and if we don't have them with us and they have the right mindsets, then we will not succeed, definitely. So to conclude, there are some tensions in the future that we have to take care of. We have to pay back on the security debt. We have the resources, not to solve the whole problem, but we could do very, very much with the resources that we all have. And we can influence the situation if we want to. Very much has to do with psychological factors, with leadership that could take us to a point. A bad leadership, then I know from personal experiences, then the easiest task will be impossible. But with the good leadership that we have, we could transform ourselves into a good position. And we should not work under the 11th and the 12th commandment, the 10th one that we are given, that's good enough for all of us. And maybe that could be one of the questions if someone didn't know about the 11th and the 12th commandment. So I wish you all good luck with building the future with a balance between operations, development, and security. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anders. Yeah. Do you have any questions?
Hello? Now. Yeah, Anders, thank you for a nice presentation. What do you say about terrorism? Are we in Sweden on the bridge to having our own terror organization to be classified with Foxtrot, attacking other countries' political systems?
Yeah, but you are not talking to a legal person now that you realize, and then you could judge the answer. But I would say that asking the question 3 weeks ago, I would say, no, that's organized criminality. But looking at the news that now comes with states, that basically there are information about states has been financing and probably giving the directives to them. And I can say that I couldn't exclude that option. I definitely think that our politicians and their legal experts should dig into that, and if that could raise the so to say the threshold against a terrorist attack, I would definitely vote for it. Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you. Thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. I share your realism, I would call it, on the state of the planet, and then throw climate change in as well. And we're looking for a very challenging couple of decades, certainly. Question around Russia. Given your experience, how might that play out? What are the options for defeating Russia? Do you think they're just going to give up if Ukraine holds out long enough?
That is a very you formulated the question, but I normally I try to answer another one, but I will cover yours. But what will happen in what can happen in Ukraine? I mean, theoretically, it can Russia can win, so to say. We all know about the 8th of August 1918. The Germans do, the Black Day of the German army. No? After 4 years of war fighting in the First World War, they started to just run like rabbits, so to say, the soldiers, and then it was over. No? That can happen. That can happen. Russia can win, but also Ukraine can win. It could happen something in Kremlin and whatever we know, but that can happen, so to say. The third option would be that it could be like a frozen conflict. A frozen conflict like the one in Kashmir and so on. That is, nobody really knows about how it is. And then it could be a, so to say, what is the Swedish word? A negotiation solution. Huh? That to say that sometimes I can be afraid when I hear to Donald Trump. No? That he goes in and says, okay, they have to swallow, so to say. That all the small states in the world history are extremely afraid about big neighbors that said, okay, you have to do you could take Donbass and you could take Crimea and then it would be peace. No? And then the fifth option, what is that? That is, of course, an escalation. We have a third world war that we hopefully not will have. Did it cover part of your question? No?
Thank you.
No one will ask about the 11th and the 12th commandments. You all know about it then, so I don't bother to repeat it for you. But I think that is very important because those organizations that are working along those two commandments, they never get out of this, so to say, their own framework. Okay, you have this question. Which are they? Huh? One that didn't know it beside all of you now. It was actually that when I did the general staff training, we had this Lennart Koskinen. I don't know if you know him. He was then a student priest in Stockholm. It was some years ago. And then he became bishop in Visby. And then now he's retired. He had the ethics with us, very good. And he talked about organizations that are never change their own mindset, never ever change their own mindset. And he said in his Finnish-Swedish, so to say, och så har vi det 11:e och det 12:e budordet. And the 11th commandment, that is, we have always been doing like this, and that we will do in the future also. And the 12th is, we have never been working like that, and we will not do that now either. And if you have those two and working, then you won't fulfill the objectives that I was talking about. Thank you very much for the question. Mm-hmm. And congratulations to the rest of you that have heard about these 11th and the 12th commandments. You are very clever, no?
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Anders.